My name is Luis Gonzalez, and this is my personal narrative, a journey to self-acceptance through health. I remember a moment very vividly when I was standing in front of the mirror, just staring back at myself, feeling the sense of being trapped in a body that didn't necessarily feel like it was me. When I was standing at my heaviest, which was 230 pounds, I wasn't healthy feeling. If anything, I felt invisible to others, kind of as if I didn't matter. I was often overlooked, and the weight I was just wasn't a number that I felt was a representation of me and of the physical struggles that I often had to carry from a young age. With my personal narrative, I want to share a story with everyone on how I reached a breaking point and how I found the strength to change. This story is not just about losing weight, but more about the self discovery, as well as seeing the world differently. Through this journey of mine, I learned that society unfortunately treats people based off of their appearance greatly, and the perception of myself shaped what was my reality and ultimately how I often overcame certain obstacles that made me feel like I was being held back for so long. Growing up as a kid, I was always the bigger kid in most situations. I was never the fastest, nor was I the most athletic, but I constantly felt like I was standing out at all times. I typically typically someone would want to stand out. Uh, sorry, not in the way that someone would typically want to stand out from a pretty early age, but food had always just been a comfort, especially when I was sad. My family had always been supportive, and they never saw an issue with my weight. They saw me happy and they didn't want to take that away from me. So as I grew older over the years, the reality of my weight kind of set in that it was pretty hard to ignore at times, especially when I was faced with being in a social environment. The most difficult aspect I would say of being overweight is that social aspect. I just feel like constantly being ignored. There would often be moments where I would say hi to people just to be a kind person, and they would give me a certain type of look or often just ignore me, especially when I would say good morning to them, for example. And the wake up call for me was when I had been diagnosed as being pre-diabetic. When the doctor told me those results, it shook me up because other family members had previously dealt with diabetes, and one had unfortunately got into a coma because of it. And this made me worried about the future that I had ahead of myself. So this to me felt like the moment where I had to change if I wanted to continue to be alive. And breaking some of these habits were not easy. In the early stages, it was difficult to keep myself from snacking on unhealthy foods, and just remembering how other people treated me was something that kind of kept pushing me through. And slowly over the course of this last year, I noticed that breaking these habits became easier slowly over time with constantly pushing myself. And during this time, the biggest tool I gained during my weight loss journey was the self-awareness. I had finally mastered how to control my habits and finally felt comfortable with myself. I Food had no longer been a coping mechanism for me. I found other ways to express myself and certain emotions. And within the last year, I slowly started to feel like I had more energy, but socially, I noticed a lot of change. Suddenly, random people engaged with me, and I no longer felt like I was ignored. People actually seemed excited to talk to me, and it just made me realize a lot about society. The main takeaway from my journey has taught me that one of the biggest lessons about how much our words and actions affect people, you really never know what someone is going through, and you should always treat people with kindness and respect, which doesn't really cost us anything. And physical appearance shouldn't really define someone. And in my eyes, everyone deserves to be heard and valued for who they are. Kind of going back to the whole mirror, looking at myself in that reflection. Um, It made me realize that the biggest change wasn't really my weight, it was more of my mindset. I no longer felt invisible, and I was someone who overcame self-doubt and found a way to believe what I was worth, and no scale can really measure that. Fortunately, I don't have many pictures of myself in the past when I was at that weight. I didn't really feel comfortable taking pictures, but this is one when I was almost at my heaviest. And then this is me more of a recent picture on my sister's birthday. But thank you for listening to my narrative.